Well, have a seat, Kate.
Thank you, Nick.
And let me welcome you officially here to Mount Pleasant Baptist Church.
It's good to be here.
Why don't we give Kate another quick welcome, round of applause. Great to have her here.
Thank you.
So the idea is what we're going to do is just while these guys sort of quietly cook in the background, we're asking you to multitask and just enjoy what's happening and sort of keep an eye on the cooking that's happening behind us. And at the same time, Kate and I are just going to have a little bit of a chat and a bit of a get to know you.
And you're going to have to let us know if anything catches on fire because I won't be able to see it.
That's right.
Need to be able to move.
We're not multitasking. You're multitasking. We don't know what's going on behind us. But welcome, Kate. And
thank you.
You're not from these parts.
I'm not from these parts. I'm from a distant land. I live in Orange, which is a little regional town of about 40,000 people, 4 hours drive west of Sydney.
Yes. And so what are you doing here? That's probably the big question.
Yeah, good question. What am I doing here?
Well, you're here because we invited you, but you're here for other reasons as well.
I'm here because you invited me. I'm here because I was also invited by City Bible Forum to do an event at the Perth Town Hall last Thursday night. And I was also invited by St Mark's School. I forget where they are, but I was there the other day and it was great. Planets aligned. We managed to be able to come over here. And I'm also very fortunate to be able to visit with my sister and my brother-in-law and her 2 boys, because she has lived in Perth she's actually here tonight, 25 years maybe? Something like that.
Where is she? She should give us a wave right around about this point.
I don't even know where she is.
Over there.
Hey,
yeah, welcome.
There we are.
Great to have you here. So tell us a bit about the event on Thursday night. That was the town hall, and it was some sort of cooking. You were cooking.
Yeah, I was doing a cooking demonstration, a couple of cooking demonstrations, really just about the kind of food that I love to eat. You know, what you see on MasterChef where you're given 3 hours to create just one little dish. It's not very practical when you have 3 children and a job. So this was more about that everyday kind of cooking, balancing flavours and textures and those kinds of things that I just love to incorporate into our everyday meals. Food is something that I obviously really enjoy, and so I take every possible moment to enjoy it. And I'm fortunate because we get to have breakfast, lunch, dinner, morning tea, afternoon tea every day. And so it was just about sharing those kinds of meals with people and giving them a few tips and tricks to be able to, get out of the food rut that we all get into sometimes. But it was also an opportunity to be able to share with the people that came along my love of God, because I am a Christian. I've been a Christian for a number of years. And I feel very privileged to be able to do events like tonight where we talk about food and God, 2 of my greatest loves.
Which is a night that's becoming increasingly cool as we see. Look at that technology there. How's that working?
Can I give the cameraman a tip? You've actually got to go behind where they are and get in their way a little bit and stress them out completely and make them trip over you sometimes, and then you can edit it out later.
The voice of experience. So, it'd be good to just learn a little bit about your background, I suppose, Kate. Tell us a bit about where you grew up and what life was like for you growing up.
So I grew up in Sydney.
Gee whiz, something just flew across the stage there.
Do I need to move? I grew up in Sydney with mum, dad and 2 sisters. Had a very happy childhood, very idyllic childhood. We did go to church, but I wouldn't actually say I was Christian as a child, and I'll tell you more about that a bit later on. Rode my bike on the street, ate 3 veg and meat pretty much every night, and grew up actually being rather fussy eater, so have hope, because I eat just about anything now, and I was also really shy as a kid. And so my mum looks at me now and sees me doing things like this with, cooking demos with all these crazy foods and talking to people, hundreds of people. And she just goes, "Who are you? You're not the kid I raised." So yeah, life was good. Life was, obviously still has its ups and downs. It does for everybody. But yeah, I look back on those years growing up and it was with very fond memories.
And fast forward to today, and you're a mum, you're a wife.
I am, yeah.
Tell us about your family now.
So I'm married to Luke. We've been married for nearly 20 years, and we have 3 children. Erin is 14 and in year 9 at school. Liam is 12 and in year 7. and Maya is 10 and she's in year 4 at school. So life is busy. They've kind of we've hit that teenage, mum has to be the taxi stage, where they've all got their own little social lives and I've got to try and juggle it all. And these days I actually spend a lot of my time at school with them. I was a primary school teacher prior to having children, and then on and off when the kids were little. So pre-MasterChef, did a lot of primary school teaching, and then obviously left that for a few years of crazy. But a couple of years ago, went back to teaching. I teach food tech at school, but I also teach religious education to primary school students. And the reason for that was I had a little food business at home that I was at. Sizzles, that's a good sign.
Behind us.
Don't worry about the smoke alarm. It's right up there.
I think we've turned the smoke alarms off. Where's that fire extinguisher, just quietly? Anything can happen, folks.
I might shuffle forward a bit.
Everything's fine.
Have you tried turning it down? No, there's an idea.
You're right there, Rob. Have you ever cooked before? First time. We've got some fans, some air conditioning or something we can just flick on just for a second.
I actually did a cooking demo years ago in front of a crowd not dissimilar to this one, and had it all set up. And we use the same kind of little camp stove often wherever I go. And so this particular night I didn't bother to check the setup. I just thought, oh, yep, I know that kind. And so in the middle of this cooking demo, I turn the gas on and the whole table just goes whoo, up in flames. Oh. The butane gas bottle that was inside it had leaked all over the table.
No.
Fortunately, nobody got burnt, nothing got harmed, and I was able to carry on. But the organisers had a little bit of a fright. So after that, I now check every cooktop that I have to use.
And there would have been many different cooktops you've used. Just wondering, just thinking of Mike, I've got kids, our kids are now 24 and 22, and still to this day, I think neither of them have shown any interest in cooking whatsoever.
Uh-oh.
One was married, so... But obviously for you at some point, there was a time when you began to show an interest in culinary things.
Yeah, look, I think it's interesting because I was a fussy eater, so I never really showed much interest in dinner. In fact, often tried to secretly push it on the floor and do the old, oops, fell on the floor, can't eat it now.
Broccoli.
But I developed a love of baking, probably because you could eat it and it was sugary and buttery and yum. And so I remember, I have a distinct memory of being about 8 or 9, and it being those long school summer holidays, and I remember going to Mum and saying, I'm bored. And she said, oh, I don't know, why don't you cook something? And I grew up in the era of, Peter Russell Clark. And so I was, a bit Bernard King. I was a bit familiar with TV chefs. And
Peter
I suddenly...
Clark, that was Peter, g'day.
Russell,
g'day.
Clark. That's it.
10
That's the
minutes.
See you later.
Yep.
You remember that?
Yes.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
thank you. I thought they were all going to go, no. Carry
So
on.
I had this little light bulb moment of, I could put on a TV cooking show. So I spent ages in the kitchen measuring everything out into little dishes and things, and then, stood at the bench and chatted to the wall as if I was on TV, pouring everything in, and made this, layered coffee-flavoured cake and, piped icing on it. First ever attempt. So you can imagine it was probably not that pretty. But I thought it was wonderful. And I remember at the end of the day, Mum in particular just being, aren't you clever? As mums are wont to do. And feeling just this sense of pride that I had created this and I'd had fun as I did it. And so I sort of think that's kind of the day that I fell in love with cooking. But I was pretty much always a baker. So it was always, cakes and biscuits and sweet treats all the way through until I sort of hit my sort of late teens, early 20s, and I actually got a job in an Italian restaurant. And the chef was a mama. She was, I was just waitressing, but she would cook every night that I worked. She'd cook, and I suddenly started tasting these other flavours that I'd not really been used to before, and this world of flavour opened up for me. And I'd ask her all these questions, and she pretty much gave me most of her secrets except the tiramisu. That was Long tradition of we do not tell, and I still to this day don't have that recipe. Anyway.
So there must have been a time when they were advertising MasterChef and advertising for people to audition, when you just for some reason thought, that's me, I think I will win MasterChef one day. Did you ever thought like that?
Didn't quite happen like that. So my husband is one of these people that just kind of knows what's going on all the time. Is there anybody in the room like that? He just seems to always know. He's a researcher. Anyway, he came home from work before the first season of MasterChef, and he said, hey, Kate, there's this new show coming called MasterChef. It's going to be on TV. I reckon you should go on it. I looked at him and said, I'm not going on TV. And he said, just watch. They do a version in the UK. You can watch it online. Just watch it and then we'll talk about it. So I watched this, MasterChef UK and thought, oh my goodness, that looks like so much fun. So I went online and looked it up and filled out the application form until the last question. And it was just a simple, short, one-page thing. And the last question was, would you be willing to be away from your family for up to 4 months of filming? And my baby at the time was 1. And I thought, no, not interested. I don't think I could do that. And so I shut it down, didn't send it. And my husband's like, why not? You could still go. I'm like, I'm not leaving my baby at 1 year old. Anyway, watched season 1, watched all of season 2, and at the end of season 2, an ad flashed up on TV, applications open for season 3 now. And I was really actually quite intrigued because this show that I'd sort of seen online and nobody knew about had become this juggernaut. In the season 2, it had the highest ratings of any reality TV show in many years. And so I was quite fascinated and I thought, I wonder how that application form has changed. So I went online more out of curiosity and it had changed a lot. It was really long and really detailed. What's your greatest fear? What's your, not just what do you cook for dinner, but, what's your greatest fear? What's your greatest ambition in life? What's the best thing you've ever done? What's the worst thing? What's the most embarrassing thing? Oh, like just everything. And and it was one of those systems where you had to fill out every field on the page before it'd let you go on to the next page. So gradually over the course of a couple of days, more out of curiosity to see what they were going to ask, I sort of filled out a few questions, went on to the next page. Oh, look, there they are, filled out. Not really thinking too much about it. Next page. Kept going for a few days. It was long. And then got to the last page and didn't suss out that it was the last page because the submit button was in the same spot as the next page button. So I just kind of pressed it and immediately had that, oh well, doesn't matter. Nobody ever gets into these things. That'll be fine. Didn't even tell Luke that I'd done it. I was just curious. And so then it was a few weeks later I got a call to say, we'd like you to come in for an audition. I said, I don't know about that. I don't think I'd want to go on MasterChef. And Luke's like, why not? This is a great opportunity. I'm like, I don't know. And he goes, Kate, it's a weekend away from the kids. Yeah, get to meet Gary and George and Matt. I'm like, oh, he's right. I'm in. I'm going. So I worked out a dish. Off I went. And I did it for a couple of days.
5 minutes.
Oh, 10 minutes.
No, 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Quick, go.
Come on.
Wasn't there supposed to be a 10-minute warning as well?
Yeah, I did, and you didn't hear me.
You forgot to use
That's
your
pretty
microphone.
much what I always did. What do you mean? 5 minutes? Only 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Quick
Anyway,
panic. How's the progress?
make it quick.
Let's do a quick progress, just review.
It's smelling
Tell you
good
what, it
already.
smells
guys
really
smell
good
it?
up here. It smells really good. Oh, chicken. Flavouring.
Hang on, pre-packet bits. How do you get those?
Mystery box. Anything goes.
Anyway, so I go off to this audition and, do it, have my fun, come home. Yeah, that was a great weekend. And it was probably about 6 weeks later. So I'd completely forgotten. It was, back of memory. And I get this call while I was at the shops. Guess what? You've made it into the top 50. And I was like, okay. Can I call you back tomorrow? I'm not quite sure about this. And the lady on the end who's in charge of casting said, are you serious? I said, I'm deadly serious. I don't know if I can just leave my family. She said, all right, you've got till 4 p.m. tomorrow. And I had the most agonising sort of 24 hours of trying to work out, do I go, do I not go? I'm arguing all the reasons to my husband why I can't go. You know, I help in the kindy classroom, I've got to look after my daughter, I've got to, I don't know, trying to come up with all these reasons why I couldn't go.
And meanwhile, it had gone actually from 4 months to 8 months, potentially, if you made
Well,
it
they
through the
didn't
grand
know
final.
this at this stage.
Right.
Didn't know that at that stage. So I end up, you know, arguing all the reasons why I don't think this is a good idea, and my husband is arguing all the reasons why he thinks it's a great idea, doors open, you know, and in the end he says, look, Kate, just give it a go. It's not like you're going to win it. So off I go thinking, oh, well, I'll probably only be in there for a couple of weeks, come home. I didn't tell a single soul that I was going, apart from my mother-in-law, because I needed her to mind the 3, nearly 4-year-old, and a good friend, because I needed her to help transport my other daughter to piano lessons and sport and all that kind of thing. And yeah, off I went. And it wasn't until I got in there. You have to sign a contract before you join the top 24. And at that point it says the winner and runner-up will be away for a total of 8 months of filming. And I went, oh, that's fine, that's not me. Why I sign? Yeah, it was me.
In fact, you went on to plan a holiday.
We did. So my family and I, you know, we don't do a lot of big holidays, you know. We sort of save up for a long time and then we do a holiday. We decided it was time to take the kids on a plane and we were going to take them up to Queensland and have a lovely beach holiday. So we sat down with the diaries and went, let's do it in June. I'd started filming in January for the top 24 and we knew that it finished in August. And so we thought, June, I'll well and truly be home by then. We can go on our holiday and I'll still have enough time to come back and film because they always get all the contestants back to film the finale. And so, as you know, March is going and April's going. I'm ringing my husband, I'm still in. And, you know, June's happening. June's getting closer and closer. And, in fact, we had to do a challenge on the day that my family were flying off to Queensland without me. And I'm bawling my eyes out during this challenge. And the producers are saying, what is wrong with you? I said, my family's gone on a holiday and I was supposed to go with them, but I'm still in here. And, you know, there's conversations as you go about, you know, oh, you'll definitely make it to the top 5. And I'm like, there's no way, I'll be out of here in, you know, any minute. And the producers, when I finally said, you know, I've missed this family holiday, I feel like I'm back there, it's scary.
Come on, plate up.
Yeah, they said to me, oh my goodness, you really didn't think you were going to be in here. It's like, no, I didn't think I was going to be in here still. All right. 1 minute, that's not long. We're nearly at countdown time.
Not long,
Nearly
there.
10 seconds, nearly.
And
It's looking good. Time to dish out now.
Oh my
Come
goodness.
on, come on.
Come on, you've got to get it on the plate.
Time to dish out on the plate. Dish it out, Nikki. You've got 10 seconds.
Such pressure.
You don't have spoons. Use your thing there. There, that one. Okay.
Use your fingers.
You improvise. When there's
Ready?
nothing, you
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
improvise. What a lot of people don't realise is with
it's
MasterChef, you're actually cooking
very,
in a set,
very good here.
not an actual kitchen.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
finished.
you know, things like water can run out. So you just got to
10,
improvise.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Woo! A big hand. Woo! Wow. Let's give our contestants a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
So, Bernadette, what have you made for us?
Frantic prawns.
Frantic prawns. This sounds like it's got a story behind it, which means you're in a really good place to win.
It's just that it's so difficult to cook without all the equipment that you need. So
I
it's all
know.
improvised. And I was just panicking.
So you're saying the organisers didn't do a great job in providing the
Oh,
equipment?
he did.
Actually, they did a perfect job because it puts you under pressure and that's far more
Yes.
entertaining to watch. Looks
Well-
like you've done a beautiful job.
Right.
It looks and smells delicious.
Now, does she have to go off to some other room while we chase?
That's right. So you can make your way now, Bernard. So what? Yeah, explain how.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Talk us through the...
Oh, she's got to serve it.
yeah. Where's Kate's plate? There you go. Where's my tongue?
It's okay. They can.
Oh, okay.
Where's the service?
So you drizzle a bit of this vinaigrette.
Oh.
I just had to improvise with the orange because there was no lemon in there, but I hope that
Beautiful.
good.
It looks beautiful.
Wow. So it's frantic prawn with vinaigrette. Let's give Bernadette a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. Please make your way back to your table. So,
And my tweezers that George always uses. A little bit chunkier than his, but you know.
wow. So we've got
It actually
the
smells
judges,
amazing.
and they're gonna tell us. And the scoring board, Christine, the shades are here. Okay. Yep. And we have some background music. Janelle, where are you? Yes. Thank you. Oh, vinaigrette. Okay. Wow. Okay. Looks like Nick is going to finish his.
I reckon you can play happy music. You know, they play happy music when they do well.
So our judges, ladies and gentlemen, is going to give a score, 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest. And so depending on the flavor and the texture and the consistency or whatever it is, they're going to give a score. Oh, Kate is having a second bite. That's like looking promising.
I would say it's a very well-balanced dish. Would you say that, Kate?
Definitely well balanced, and the prawns cooked perfectly.
They will cook perfectly, yeah. Beautiful.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, our second contestant, please welcome Rob Thomas.
So you get to see behind the scenes of television. It just gets hoiked off the bat. Tell us what you've made.
Tonight I have a big mistake with
Boom, boom.
what this is with smoky greens.
Smoky greens. Beautiful.
Smoky greens.
The story behind that is pans that burn.
Rob,
Love
the steak seems quite char grilled. Was that your intention?
It's
from the word go?
single side burnt.
Single side burnt.
But I
Now,
think it adds
before-
to the texture and the flavor.
Before we do the dramatic cut through that we'll need a close up of, how have you cooked this steak? Rare, medium, well done?
You tell me.
Good
We'll go for the
answer.
goal of medium rare to medium.
All right, let's give Rob a big hand. Oh, that's the cut. Oh, what is it, Kate? Medium well. Okay, Rob, did you hear that? Medium well. Wow, medium well with, I can see that there's bits of mushroom in there, broccolini, asparagus. Wow, that looks good. Now, I don't think Nick has had dinner, and I have a feeling that he might finish this one. Yeah.
Delicious.
So we can't give too much away. Got to be very straight faced.
That's right, yeah.
Well, got to cause a little bit of tension here. You know, but the charriness actually is really nice.
Well, there's tension.
Oh, tension.
Actually, there's I would say there's a bit of tension in the steak.
It's beautiful. You've cooked it perfectly.
All right, it's time for our judges to give their score for our our second contestant. Nikki, would you like to make your way and be ready to present your dish to our judges?
So what have we got here?
Throw it all in chicken taco.
Throw it all in chicken taco. I like it. So your hero ingredient was chicken.
Yes.
How did you feel about that?
Well, I was hoping I would get beef or shrimp, but I got the chicken. Yeah.
And tell me, do you have a particular love of Mexican food?
Yes, I do like Mexican food.
And what kind of, food dream around Mexican food have you got? Think fast.
I like the burrito and nachos.
Okay, beautiful. So you're going to open up a food van or something? No. Okay.
Thank you, Nikki. Let's give Nikki a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. As Kate and Nick will now try the throw it all in taco.
So how are we going to do this? There's only one. Brilliant.
There you go. Oh, with avocado and corn and tomato salsa. That sounds really good. Looks good too. I think that's like a one mouthful type thing. Yeah, I think so. We are so high tech in this studio. Sophisticated.
We've even got product placement.
Yeah.
Paper towels.
Wow, all right. So our judges is gonna give their score. Now, Nick, how long have you been a judge in MasterChef? Oh, okay. That's all right. We'll give him a little break to chew his food. All right, that's the third dish. Thank you to our judges. Incredible. Wow, Kate.
Beautiful.
Are you impressed?
So impressed. The level of chefs that we have this year is unprecedented.
Wow, wonderful. And you know what? To make it this far into the top 3, we've been saying goodbye every week to all our contestants. And these guys, look at them. They're beautiful, fantastic, amazing, talented, gifted.
Any 3 are deserving to take out the title.
Yes, in fact, we have a prize for all 3. So they're actually winners already.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, but it's just a matter of whether the first, second, or third.
Well,
Nick, how you going with your food? Still chewing?
Still chewing, but boy, that's the best Mexican food I've had for a long time. Fantastic.
All right, let's give our contestants a big round of applause. And of course, our judges, Kate Bracks and Nick Scott.
oh, geez, that brings memories back. And in fact, that's often what happened, except you had to go off before they'd come and taste the food, and then the food would be cold by the time they tasted it. You just hope it still tasted okay. MasterChef was an interesting experience for me, and it was actually the year before 2011 when it all started. So it was 2010 when I found myself standing as a big group of a crowd of 50 strangers on Cockatoo Island, which is in the middle of Sydney Harbour, and the 3 judges were in front of us. And I vividly remember Gary Megan saying, "You've come to MasterChef to change your life." And I remember standing there thinking, I actually quite like my life. I really just came because I quite like food and I quite like this show and I just wanted to see what was going on. So obviously, with the benefit of hindsight, I got a lot more than I bargained for. As I mentioned to you just a little bit earlier, I kind of entered MasterChef a little bit by accident. It wasn't really my intention to go and be on TV and to cook like this, but I have always loved cooking. And it's been a passion that's been with me for a long time, and it's grown over years. And I think one of the things I love about cooking is it's something I know I'll always keep learning. It's interesting actually watching those little snippets before, and I look at it and I think, oh, really? I cooked that? It's funny how things change over time. When I went into MasterChef, as I said, I went in expecting I'd be there for a couple of weeks and home within no time. I was really fortunate to be one of the first people who got a private masterclass, because in those days, we're talking back, 6 years, those days, a small group of contestants were selected each week to go on a private masterclass. And I was chosen in the very first round to go to Maggie Beer's pheasant farm. And Maggie Beer, to me, is the kind of cook I aspire to be. She's not a trained chef. She just loves food and is self-taught and just looks at what's happening in the land around her and loves to put that on a plate. And I love her flavours and those kinds of things. So when I got to go to Maggie Beer's pheasant farm, before we'd even started shooting the top 24, I came home and I said to my husband, well, if that's all I get out of MasterChef, that has been worth it. That was amazing. But obviously, I ended up with so much more. And I kind of feel sometimes when I look back on it like it's a different me. I have to kind of pinch myself and say, that was me. I got to meet those chefs. I got to go to those places. I got to do all those crazy, weird things. And it really is a bit of an alternate universe, that one that I lived in for a while. There are some hard things, though, about being on a show like MasterChef too. You have to be away from your family. And as I was saying to you before, in my season, I was away for a total of 8 months. I did get to have short breaks home when I'd catch up with the kids, and I did get to have Skype calls and little visits from them through that 8-month period. But being away from my family for that length of time was never anything that I expected to do, but it was one of the toughest parts of it, even though it sounds a little bit cliched. It's interesting as well when you come home from a show like MasterChef. As I got sort of closer to the end, I started to realise, oh my goodness, what if I actually win this thing? Knowing that was actually going to change a lot for me. And in fact, it did. I went from just being, well, I still feel like I am, a very ordinary mum with 3 kids who have to get them off to school and pack their lunchboxes and do the washing and clean the toilet and all those kinds of things. But at the same time, I was, being helicoptered here and sitting in hair and makeup chairs there and answering, journalists here and things that I really didn't feel very prepared for, but was just kind of thrown into. And while that was fun, it was also a big challenge. I think it's really interesting when we look back on life and see that the decisions that we make along the way can really change the way that things are for us today. Another example in my life is actually while I was at university studying primary teaching, there was a uni trip off to visit some schools and to do some teaching practice in Thailand. And I originally didn't sign up for the trip. I thought, it doesn't really appeal to me. But the lecturer who was organising the trip came to me and he said, Kate, I really think you would enjoy it and I really think you would get a lot out of it. I'll hold a spot for you. Please just go and talk to somebody who went last year and then come back and tell me you still don't want it. So off I went and I chatted to a friend that I knew had been the year before and she said to me, Kate, it was a life-changing, amazing experience. I think you should go. So I went back to him because I was thinking, I've got nothing to lose. I'd been working, I had a bit of money in the bank. And so I decided to go to this trip to Thailand and that was where I met Luke. So there you go. Some decisions you make really do change your life. I'm sure you can think of some of your own examples. Those decisions that you make, sometimes in a split second, sometimes really well thought out, but they change the rest of the course of your life. Now, it is, of course, my hope that if you've come here tonight, you don't normally sit in a church, that you have been made aware that I was coming to talk to you not just about MasterChef, but also about my decision to become a Christian. Because it's important to me that you come knowing that, so you don't feel hoodwinked in any way. But I want to share with you a little bit about that journey, because to me, that was an even bigger decision with far bigger reaching consequences than even MasterChef or even marrying my husband. You see, I did grow up in a family that went to church, but I myself didn't really feel any sort of sense of connection with God in a personal way And I was really worried that if I wanted to take God seriously, that all the things I enjoyed in life were going to have to come to an end. I had formed in my mind this idea that God wasn't really for having a good time. I'd heard that, as a Christian, you need to follow all these rules, and you've got to do this, and you're not allowed to do this, and you've got to go to church on Sunday, and you've got to be kind, and I thought it was a whole long list of rules that I had to keep. And at the age of about sort of 19, 20, even into 21, I just like to party. I just like to go out and have a good time. I kind of knew that God existed. I sort of still had a vague sense that there was a God, but I didn't really want him to have any impact on my life because I thought that then all the fun would end. But one night I was getting ready to go out again, and I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. I don't know if you ever do that. You just sort of catch yourself and you have that momentary thought. And I suddenly thought, what's it all about? Who are you? Why are you even here on this earth? What's the point of it all? Now, it was just a moment. I sort of shoved it out of my mind and carried on, went off and had a good night, but it kept niggling at me. I kept thinking, I don't understand why we're here as human beings, or me personally. And so I began a bit of a journey of exploration because I needed to know an answer to that question. I started to ask questions of everybody I knew, particularly older people, because I thought they'll have it worked out by now. I read books. I watched videos, because DVDs hadn't been invented then. And I just was hungry. I read about things like Hinduism and Buddhism and Islam. I wanted to compare them to what I knew of Christianity. I also asked about, astrology and all these new age ideas. I even spoke to people about their philosophies of life that they'd kind of created for themselves. I just was hungry to know the answers, those fundamental answers. Who are we and why are we here? At the same time, it was suggested to me that maybe I might like to go back to church, to a different church. And I thought, throw it into the mix. Why not? You see, I didn't want to assume immediately that the God that I'd grown up with in the Bible was the only way of understanding the world. And so that's why I kind of explored everything. But I actually thought it was important to revisit it as an adult too. So I went back to church and I started to hear the Bible being taught in a way that it had never been taught, or in a way that I'd never heard it taught before. And to cut a long story short, because it was over about the course of about a year, I discovered something very unique about the God of the Bible. What I discovered was that he is a God that acts for us, doesn't expect us to act for him. He is the only way of thinking about the world where it's not about me and what I've done or what I'm doing, but it's about him and what he has already done. Now, like I said, I think it was really crucial that I was meeting the God in the Bible. You see, in many churches and in many Christian groups, we don't always hear an accurate view of the God of the Bible because Christians themselves make mistakes. And so I started to look into the Bible with the help of some Christians. And what I discovered was something, like I said to you, that it was a God that I had never really met before. I thought I knew God, but this time it was different. And in order to show you just a little bit of a snippet about this God, the God of the Bible that I met, I want to read to you a little section from the Bible. Now, the Bible is a big and complex book. It's not one that you just sit down and read from front cover to the end. But I want to just take you through one little example of it to familiarise you with it if you're not already familiar. We're going to look at a little section from the Bible that tells the story of Jesus not long after he had started to do God's work. So he grew up, we all think of Jesus as that baby in the manger. Well, he grew up into a man, and he was a carpenter for a while, but then it became time for him to do the work that God had sent him to do. And he's approached a small number of men to come with him, to learn from him so that they can then carry his ministry on. And for various reasons, these men have given up their daytime jobs to follow Jesus and learn from him. And the little account that we're going to read from the Bible comes just after this has started. So it's right at the beginning of what we call Jesus' ministry, which just is his work for God. So it's going to come up on the screen for us, and we're going to read it. It says, "On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, 'They have no more wine.' 'Woman, why do you involve me?' Jesus replied. 'My hour has not yet come.' His mother said to the servants, 'Do whatever he tells you.' Well, nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, 'Fill the jars with water.' So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, 'Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet.' They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and he said, 'Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink, but you have saved the best till now.' What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother and brothers and his disciples, and there they stayed for a few days." I love this story on so many different levels, and I just want to unpack it a little bit for you now. You see, many of us, myself included, at one time or another, have been told and sometimes believe that God is opposed to parties, that God is not about having a good time, that he's the ultimate party pooper. I did think that way. And here we see that God is actually the one, Jesus is the one, that actually keeps the party going. In ancient times, wedding feasts were actually a really important community event because the union of 2 families generally meant stronger family bonds, greater military strength, a better economy, and a general flourishing for the entire community. So wedding feasts were an important celebration for the entire community, not just the 2 families, as is the case in our Western world today. And these weddings usually went on for days, and everybody from the community was invited. This particular wedding is facing the threat of ending prematurely. And in ancient times, when a shame culture was prevalent, that would have meant social disgrace for both families. Jesus steps in and ensures the party keeps on going. But there is so much more going on than Jesus just trying to save 2 families from social embarrassment. I'm not sure if you realise, but as we read through that, towards the end, it's referred to, this particular act that Jesus did is referred to the first of Jesus' miraculous signs. You see, when this was written, this wasn't just to relay something miraculous that Jesus did. Great, he turned water into wine. But actually it was a sign to show us who Jesus is, a sign to reveal his glory to us. Those words are reflected in the text. And so we need to look a little deeper into these words to see what exactly it's talking about. Now, to understand these ancient weddings, it's helpful to know that the role of the master of the banquet was actually, their role was to ensure that the party kept going. So while it's a little bit similar to today to our master of ceremonies or to our MC, in those times it was much more than that. It wasn't just about keeping proceedings going. It was actually about keeping the entire event going. The food, the wine, the speeches, the accommodation, the everything. It was the master of the banquet that was in charge of running the entire event. And what we see in this story is Jesus stepping into the role of the master of the banquet. But not just the master of this banquet, but the master of a much bigger banquet. At the end of time, the Bible tells us that there is going to be a wedding banquet that will be nothing like any other wedding banquet has ever been. It has never been experienced before, and it will never be experienced again. This will be the ultimate wedding of all time. You see, in the Bible, it recounts a number of times about Jesus being like a bridegroom. But he's not just marrying one bride. When the bridegroom is mentioned in the Bible, his bride is his church. And before we go starting to think about, big buildings and that kind of thing, what the church in the Bible actually refers to is just God's people. Any group of God's people is the church. And so Jesus, at the end of time, will be reunited, or we will be united with his bride, with his church, with his people. And there will be a celebration to end all celebrations. And so we see here a little connection between Jesus' first miraculous sign at this wedding banquet and how he is the master of the banquet at the end of time. And this is reflected in other parts of the Bible too. And there's an example here from a prophet called Isaiah, a prophet just meaning a messenger from God, who spoke at a completely different time to when Jesus lived. And he is looking forward to this banquet. And it says here, on this mountain, the Lord Almighty will prepare a feast of rich food for all peoples, a banquet of aged wine, the best of meats, the finest of wines. On this mountain, he will destroy the shroud that enfolds all people. What shroud is that? He will swallow up death forever. That shroud is death. The sovereign Lord will wipe away tears from all faces. He will remove his people from disgrace. The Lord has spoken. Isaiah spoke those words hundreds of years before Jesus was at this banquet. He wasn't talking about this banquet Jesus was going to be at, though. He was talking about the banquet at the end of all time, when death itself will be swallowed up. But I actually think the real key to understanding this particular account actually comes in Jesus' response to his mother. And it seems a little bit odd. Just to reread it, it said, when the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Dear woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied. "My time has not yet come." The version we read said our time. They're interchangeable in the original. We can hear in his words that Jesus is obviously troubled about something. His response seems somewhat harsh, doesn't it? And particularly to us as, Western people living in 2017. Because in the original Greek, he didn't even say dear woman, he just said woman. Woman, why do you involve me? My time has not yet come. I don't know about you mothers out there, but if my son spoke to me like that, get a little smack. But we know that Jesus was not trying to disrespect his mother in any way, shape or form. I think the key to understanding this is he says to her, "My time has not yet come." But he can't actually be talking about doing miracles. A lot of people think, well, he just doesn't want to do the miracle that his mum's making him. That's not the case, because what we see is he immediately goes on and does it. He says, "My time has not yet come," and then he turns to the servants and tells them what to do. What is going on here is Jesus is troubled. And I love that because it shows the human emotion that he experienced as well. I'm not sure if, I'm presuming that most of you have been to a wedding before. So I want to ask you, what is it that you think of when you sit in a wedding? I think we think of our own. If we have not yet been married, we can sit there and think, I wonder what mine will be like one day. And if we have been married, we often sit there and reflect, remember that day when it happened for me? Well, I think Jesus is doing the same thing. if we understand a wedding as the union of two people to live together in a relationship of intimacy forever, what we're seeing here is Jesus thinking about that for himself. You see, Jesus is troubled because for his wedding to take place, he knows that he has to die first. You see, Jesus didn't come to earth just to be a teacher or a healer or a good example of how to live, although he is all of those things. The main reason that Jesus came to earth was to die. The reason being is because we are told in the Bible that the punishment of sin is death. Now, sin is one of those awkward words. We don't like to talk about it. And I think it's because we don't really understand what it is. You see, many people think of sin as just the bad things we do or the good things that we don't do. But if we look to the Bible for its definition of sin, it's actually the rejection of God as the rightful boss of our lives. We all have a natural inclination to want to rule lives our own way rather than listen to God and the way he designed it to be. Even though he created us, it's that's sin. It's that thing inside us that says, no, I don't want you to be the boss. I'm going to decide. I like to liken it a bit to having a cold. You know, when you have a cold, you sneeze, your eyes are running, and you cough and you splutter. They're the symptoms. The problem is actually the virus. And for us, the problem, the virus, is actually the sin. It's that thing inside us that says, no, I don't want you to be the boss. I want to be the boss of my life. The symptoms are those things we do that hurt other people, that hurt ourselves, that hurt God's world. And God says to us that the punishment, he told Adam and Eve when he first made them, that the punishment for that is death, which in essence is separation from God. At the end of the day, you can't have a one-way relationship. If you don't want to know God, he in the end gives you what you want, separation from him. The problem is that every single one of us in our heart has that inclination to say to God, nah, I don't want you to be the boss. I want to do it my way. And so it puts God in a bit of a position of a dilemma. You see, he's created us because he wants to be in relationship with us. He wants to have friendship with us. But if we can't, if we have to be set apart and separated from him because we in ourselves have sin, well then it kind of defeats the purpose of him making us in the first place. And so this is why God sent Jesus. God sent Jesus to come into the world so that he could take that separation from God on our behalf. And it's this that Jesus, I think, is thinking about as he sits at that wedding. He's thinking about what he will have to do so that his bride, the people of God, can live in a relationship with God, can live in intimacy with him. And because his ministry at this point in time, when he's at this wedding, is only just beginning, he says to Mary, his mother, my hour has not yet come. It's not my time to die. It's almost as if he's sitting there thinking about his own wedding and what he's going to have to do in order to be united with his people in an intimate relationship forever. And she's sort of interrupted those thoughts. And he's got, my time has not yet come. I'm not ready for this. Oh, that's right. I've got to start my work. And so we see this first miraculous sign. Well, it's this God that I discovered when I started to look into the Bible for myself. It was a God who acted on my behalf. Not a God of rules and regulations, not a party pooper, not a God that demands that I have to be a certain way before I'll be accepted. God knows me intimately, and yet he goes to extraordinary lengths to bring me back into relationship with him. And he did the same for anybody who wants to accept that Jesus did that on their behalf. The Bible tells us that all it takes is faith, faith as small as a mustard seed, which is that acknowledgement that that's what Jesus did, and an assurance that that was enough. And we see in the story that's recorded for us that we read tonight, the disciples' reaction right at the end it says, and they put their faith in him. They saw this interchange for what it was. They realised in part who he was, and they put their faith in him. So when I realised that this God was the only way of thinking about the world and who we are and why we're in it, that's not about me and what I can do for me, but it's about what God has already done, then I actually wanted to put my faith in him too. And I can tell you, it brought the biggest change in my life. Even though my natural inclination was and still is in my heart to want to do things my own way rather than God's, I know that I am completely forgiven for that, and that the consequence of that has already been dealt with. The price has been paid, and that is incredibly freeing. Found that I knew who I was. I was a person made by God to be in relationship with him. I knew why I was on this earth for that very same reason, and also to be able to tell other people about him so that they could enjoy that liberating freedom of knowing the answers to these big questions and knowing a God that loves them, knows them intimately and loves them deeply. Now, there have been many changes in my life because of this decision. My response to a God that would go to such extraordinary lengths for me is to try and live his way. So I read the Bible and I try to work out what it is that God wants me to do in my life. And I try to do that. But it's not that makes me right. I choose to go to church because I want to learn more. I want to be with God's people. I want to encourage each other and be encouraged. But it's not going to church that makes me Christian. I want to make decisions about my life that show God that I'm serious about wanting to be in relationship with him. But it's not what I do that makes me right with God. And the reality is that sometimes being a Christian makes life easier, and sometimes being a Christian makes life harder. It doesn't actually change the state of affairs on earth. We still live in a world that's broken, and God is working towards fixing that at the end, but we're not there yet. But there is no other religion or philosophy that offers the answers to those questions and the true sense of peace like God, because there is no other God like him. So to steal the words from Gary Megan, perhaps you've come tonight to change your life. Inside your head, you might be like I was on that day on Cockatoo Island and think, no, Kate, I quite like my life, thanks very much. And let me say, God actually never forces himself on you or on anybody. And so as God's followers, and I will not push him onto you either. That's not the point. You are free to make that choice. But I do implore you to at least check out the claims of the God of the Bible. Don't rely on what you hear other people say or what you hear in the media or what you read of other people. Check out the God of the Bible, because the reality is every Christian in this room and out anywhere is not perfectly right yet. And we will make mistakes and we don't have all the answers. But maybe you have come to change your life. Maybe you're sitting here and you're thinking, yeah, okay, I think maybe I do need to. Well, there are lots of different things you can do. First thing I would suggest is talk to a Christian friend. But know that they don't always get it right and they don't always have all the answers. So if they don't give you the answers that you need, find another Christian friend. Or talk to somebody at a church. There are courses that are offered by many churches, and I know for a fact that this church runs regular cycles of courses like Alpha and Christianity Explored. And what they do is they just open up an opportunity for you to ask questions, to go along and find out facts and information. There's no pressure, and there should never be pressure. If you feel pressured, find a different church. I don't think this one's going to pressure you. And the other thing I would say is pray. God tells us in the Bible that if we ask and knock at the door and look for him, that we will find him. And so all we need to do is talk. And the beautiful thing about God is you can talk anywhere, anytime, anyhow, and he hears you. So you can just say the words. They don't even have to be out loud. They can be in your head. I want you to show yourself to me. I want to know if you're real. And I can tell you that he will, because he promises that in his word. So in summary, God is not a party pooper. Instead, he's the master of the banquet, and he has a banquet waiting for us at the end of time that will outdo any earthly banquet we could imagine. He looks at us as his potential bride, and he has made the way possible for us to live together in an intimate and perfect relationship with him, something that this world can't offer us in any human being. And his love is so immense that he took on our punishment for rejecting him, even though his son Jesus never had. He wants us to put our faith in him just as the disciples did, but he doesn't force us. So I'm going to pray now as a way of finishing up here. There's no need for you to pray if you don't want to, but if you do, I invite you to just close your eyes. Closing your eyes doesn't actually do anything magical, it just helps us concentrate. But all we need to do is talk to God, and in the quietness of your mind, if you agree with the words I'm saying, you can just basically say to God, I agree with that. Okay, so Father God, I thank you that we can be here tonight. I thank you that your word gives us all that we need to know about you. And I pray for anybody in this room tonight that might be looking for answers to those big questions of who we are and why we're here. I pray that you would reveal yourself to them. I thank you that you have good things waiting for us at the end of time. But most of all, I thank you for the fact that you have acted on our behalf so that we can be back in relationship with you. And I thank you for the forgiveness that we have, for the times that we don't live that way, so that, we can live in the freedom knowing that we don't have to face the consequence. And thank you for all that you have done. In Jesus' name, amen. I think we're going to sing.
And now, where's our band? Ready. The moment we've been waiting for. Third place gathered 14.5 points. Second place, 15.5 score. And of course, first place gathered 16 points. Oh, very tight. Very, very tight. Just a tight margin here. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite our contestants to come to the platform, please. Let's give them a big round of applause. Third prize goes to Nikki. Second prize, and of course you will know when I announce the second prize, be ready to cheer and scream because you will know who the winner will be, all right? Here we go. Second prize with a score of 15.5. Actually, the margin is 0.5 points. Maybe the taste, maybe the texture, I don't know. Anyway, second prize goes to Bernadette, and our winner is Rob Thomas! Woo! First prize! What can you say?
All I can say is glory be to God.
And Nikki?
I'm not gonna do this again.
And Rob? Are you sure? Let's give them a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. Well, it has been a fantastic evening. Thank you so much for joining us. And if this is your first time, please take the time to talk to someone. And of course, there is potato and leek soup waiting for you with crusty bread. Please enjoy. And also, Kate will be hanging around as well if you'd like to talk to her, have a chat and all that. She's not rushing to leave. And so please take the time to just enjoy a time of fellowship out in the foyer. Have a great week, everybody, and God bless you. Thank you.